Welcome to episode 0 of SmallTime, the podcast, where we get creative and we stay humble. My name is Mr. Flamegator, and I will be your host for this episode, and hopefully many episodes to come. What I'd like to do with this podcast is talk about creativity by means of interviewing creative people, typically for at least half an hour. In this first episode, I guess you could call this episode 0, I'll be giving you some background on what the podcast is going to be about, where the idea came from, a bit about myself, and the direction of future episodes. The idea for this podcast came from a tiny, tiny slice of streaming culture, video game streaming culture, in the very early 2010s. Before Twitch TV was the dominant streaming platform, there was a little-known website named livestream.com. And that's where everyone was streaming video games. There was no centralized platform, but Twitch TV just didn't exist yet. You would often find video game live streams on other websites and forums. You would follow a link, and wherever it ended up is where you ended up. Back in the day, there was a then little-known streaming group called Vinsauce Vidya. VIDYA, that would often advertise their streams on other websites. Now, the early 2010s, especially the very early 2010s, was when Minecraft was still an indie game. It was very, very little known. It was an experiment, really, of what could be done in a sandbox where blocks could actually be moved around and placed and left there. It was that summer, I think it was 2011, where Minecraft really exploded into popularity. So much so that on Vinesauce, they would have so many people wanting to stream this new game, Minecraft, that they created a separate stream on a separate channel that was exclusively for Minecraft. They called it Vinecraft, and that lasted for quite a little while. Vinecraft was around. Over time, the existence of the Vinecraft channel being exclusively for Minecraft that got dull. That got a little bit dull, considering how much the development of the game. It was still in very early alpha. The development of the game had stalled. So having a stream and a channel just for Minecraft grew weary on a lot of people. So the channel also started hosting other similar games. Now, that's the thing about Minecraft, is that there was very little that was similar to it. There were games at the time that were open world sandboxes, but they were very inaccessible. I'm thinking of Dwarf Fortress in particular. Later on came Terraria, but that was much later on, I think. That was years later. Now, the conflict over which games should and should not be allowed to be streamed on the Vinecraft channel, the sub-channel, that eventually led to a lot of internal strife among the community. And it eventually led to a falling out where the Vinecraft community, the people who were really there only to play and watch Minecraft, they ended up splintering off. They ended up forming their own video game streaming clan. This group became known as Double Dusk, and that is the group where I hail from. Shout out to Twitch TV/Double Dusk. From the very beginning, there was a core group of about a dozen of us, with many, many dozens more having joined over the last decade. And yes, I did just say decade. That's how long we've been together. Now, streaming channels, streaming sites, in that day and age were set up very differently than what you would find on Twitch TV right now. First of all, it was not a website that you would just visit to watch video game streams. It was a website that you would visit and you would hang out there as long as you wanted to. even when nobody was streaming, and there were long, long stretches of time where nobody streamed. This was made much more tenable with two features. The first feature was a persistent chat that you could scroll up at any time and see the history. It didn't disappear the way an IRC would disappear. It was persistent. It was hosted by a little-known chat site called Chatango, and it was very easy for a newcomer to get an account on the fly and join the conversation immediately. The fact that it was a persistent chat meant that conversations could last all day, multiple days, over a weekend, where people would come in and drop out as they became available. So you can imagine the types of conversations that were had in that sort of environment. The second feature that kept people at these sites when nobody was streaming was an autopilot of a playlist of videos, and not just internet humor, and not just humorous things or funny gag videos, but because it was a creative channel, because it was a channel focused on creativity, the community would go out of their way to find the most creatively unique videos they could find. Unique art styles and animation styles, sometimes very, very trippy. Among these was the viral hit "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared," before that actually went viral. It was back when it was the only video of its kind. Imagine being awake past midnight. Your favorite streamer just got done streaming a video game that you like. There's plenty of people in chat, and everyone is still awake, but with nothing to do. And then before anyone can start streaming again, the video "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" comes on. And you've never seen that video before. Now imagine what the chat would be like in that situation. Nobody's seen this video before. Everyone's confused, maybe a little bit scared. And the first thing that we want to do, obviously, is talk about it. Those sorts of conversations, they were always going on in the Double Dusk chat. So beyond wanting to foster a creative spirit in this little small corner of an internet community, it was the idea that we are on the cutting edge of the internet. This was back before YouTube really exploded into the media powerhouse that it is today. Live streaming was this new thing, and we were there. We were there to see it fostered into another media giants in the form of the various streaming sites now. It was the idea that the internet could be a vehicle for such powerfully creative ideas in ways that other media simply couldn't, including other sections of the internet. Where else could you see this type of creativity? Now, circling back to the persistent chat aspect of it, that's something that after Double Dusk split off from Vinecraft, that's something that was kept and sheltered very, very carefully after that transition, because the interactions of streamer to chat was something that was completely unique to that culture. It was something worth protecting. It was something worth fostering. The founder and the primary streamer of Double Dusk would encourage these conversations, oftentimes with very provocative questions. Something about how Sky would challenge the thoughts and views of those in chat led him to being revered as wise. At first, this was a label that he very, very strongly rejected. And the way he rejected it was unique. I may be misremembering this quote, but the gist of it is as follows. "No, I am SmallTime, and if I ever forget that, I encourage you to remind me. Likewise, I hope that you would want me to remind you that you are also small time. So from then on, whenever deeper topics would come up in a stream, the segment would be labeled among the community as small time. These conversations would sometimes move into voice chat, where a live dialogue could be streamed, sometimes detracting from the game being streamed. The conversation became far more interesting. An advantage of being so small that there was no likelihood of us being noticed is that no topic was off limits. There were maybe 5 to 10 viewers, maybe 15 on a good day. The chat did not require any identifying information to participate in. Even streamers could be mostly anonymous during that time, as facecam did not become prevalent until much, much later. There were attempts to grow the community, but those never came at the cost of the existing culture. Over time, the regularity of those streams did dwindle. Life goes on. But the spirit of that little slice of culture lives with us now. If I were to summarize it, it would be, there is freedom in humility. That freedom of self, freedom of mind, is how we express ourselves and how we find truth. In a way, that is what this podcast is meant to recreate. So, here at SmallTime the podcast, here I would like to talk about creativity and the effects of creativity on the lives of creators. I will be interviewing anyone who would like to discuss their creative outlet. At times, the subject may shift towards the personal or the philosophical. This is encouraged but not forced. And now a little bit about myself and my own creative outlets. In the Double Dust community, I've been known as Friggin' Carl, I've been known as BayouBro728, and I've been known as Mr. Flamegator, and a few others. In my own creative outlets, I tend to gravitate towards music. Performing and recording music on a few different instruments has been my most consistent creative outlet. In addition, I've delved into live streaming, creative writing, voice acting, and video editing. Given sort of my jack-of-all-trades approach to creativity, I find that it would be better suited for me to interview people than to talk about my own creative pursuits. I want to hear from people who enjoy being creative. I don't think it takes a certain type of person to be creative either. I think anyone can be inspired to create, if they are willing to foster that inspiration, and if they are unafraid of imperfection. But those are just my thoughts. If you would like to come on the show and talk about yours, I encourage you to reach out to me and schedule an interview. In the meantime, I remind you that I am small time, and if I ever forget that, I encourage you to remind me. Likewise, I would hope that you would want me to remind you that you are small time as well. Thanks for listening. This is Mr. Flamegator, signing off, reminding you to get creative and stay humble.